Hey guys and girls, how's it going? I hope you guys are having a great week. So E3 is here. It's kicked off a little early this year with EA's press conference that happened yesterday. So today in this video, I'm going to basically give my first impressions, my review of the conference, what I generally thought of it, and also what I thought of some of the reveals at the conference as well. So without further ado, let's kick off. Here is my review of EA Play 2018. So what did I think of EA's conference? Well, actually, I thought the conference was kind of mediocre. Actually, it was kind of poor. There wasn't enough gameplay for my liking, and I felt that the conference was just a bit lackluster. It lacked the excitement, and it was just boring in a lot of places. Now, not all of the conference was bad. There were moments of the conference that were quite good, and I will get to those. But the majority of the conference was pretty poor, in my opinion. It felt like the mood and the aim of the conference was more sort of targeted at investors than it was really at gamers. It just didn't feel like the conference was aimed at your typical gamer. So let's kick off and talk a little bit about some of the things that obviously the conference showed us and what my thoughts were. So obviously the conference started off with Battlefield 5. It was really mediocre. Like, I don't know how you get that game wrong, because obviously Battlefield 5, it's set in World War II. We have had some cinematic trailers. I was expecting for them to go in and just to completely kick it off by showing like some kind of gameplay footage, but it was really, really mediocre. They had two developers come up on stage. They were talking about Battlefield 5, and they were sort of making all these kind of promises. They were talking about the thing that obviously it's going to have single player campaign, very similar to Battlefield 1, where it's going to focus on different stories within the war, and obviously you'll get to experience those personal stories on different sides of the conflict, which I really enjoyed the single player campaign in Battlefield 1. So if Battlefield 5 is the same, then that's good. They did talk about customization. They said it's going to have, your typical kind of Battlefield things, vehicles, huge sort of 64-player combat, that kind of thing. But other than that, they didn't really show too much of anything. They then threw in the fact that the game is not going to have any loot boxes or any kind of microtransactions connected to progression, that's not going to be a thing. And then they got like a cheer for that. Like, that is something that they should be taking credit for. No, not having loot boxes should be a standard. So the fact that they were taking that as like they'd done something really good is just ridiculous, in my opinion. Now, obviously, it was interesting at EA's conference that they sort of did that straight away and decided to kind of address that situation and address that kind of like controversy to do with Battlefront 2 last year, and obviously mention the word loot box. I was surprised that they chose to do it, but the way that they were trying to take credit for that was just really stupid, in my opinion, and not even worth mentioning, to be honest. They then, obviously, not surprisingly, they announced that there is going to be a battle royale game mode for the game. It's probably something that will not be coming when the game gets released, and most likely it'll be tacked on later. I can forgive Battlefront a little bit because it is something that is tacked on extra. It's not like Call of Duty, where they're removing an entire kind of like single player campaign to make way for this battle royale, which is a really cheap way of cashing in, obviously, in the popularity of Fortnite and everything going with there. But I just think it's really sad that all of them now are trying to jump on this battle royale bandwagon, and obviously because Call of Duty have done it now, Battlefield feel that they have to do it as well. So that announcement for me, and that whole section for me, was just really, really dull, really lackluster. Of course, then we moved into EA Sports. Now, you all know I don't have a massive interest in EA Sports. It's never really been my thing. What I will say this year is they did break up the EA Sports into nice little sections. They didn't have it all in one kind of clump like they had it last year, so I thought that was better. But again, like, they just didn't show any gameplay footage. Like, FIFA 19 came on. They talked a little bit about FIFA 18 and a new World Cup update. They talked about the UEFA Cup. They actually bought the UEFA Cup out on stage and had like two developers talking about it and geeking out about this cup. Like, no one's interested in that. Like, no one was interested. Just show some gameplay footage. That's all they had to do about, how FIFA 19 is trying to improve on the previous installments, and nothing at all. So that was kind of bad. They then showed a trailer of NBA Live 2019, just trailer footage. Looked all right, but again, it's all trailer. It's not gameplay. So again, that was just boring and lackluster and really didn't need to be in the conference. And then they also showed Madden. Now, for me, this is one of the biggest cringe-worthy moments in the entire conference. They brought out an actual Madden player, I forget his name, and then they brought out a guy called Young Kiv, who apparently, I've never heard of the guy, but apparently he's like the Madden 2018 world champion, and he won some esports competition, and they brought him out and they made it all about him, which was like really awkward and really cringeworthy. And like he was asking him questions like, how did he get to become the champion, and how did he get to where he's at, and what did he have to do to sort of achieve that level of success or whatever. And I was just like, it was all about him as opposed to the actual game, which is what it should have been about. So again, it's things like this that just make me think it was targeted at investors, because it's like, oh, this is all the things that we have with our games and all the money making side of things and the advertising and publishing and everything else. And if it was focused on the gamer, it just would have showed some gameplay, and it just didn't. So that was really, really crappy. And then Star Wars came out, and I don't know how you do it, but they made Star Wars really boring. This should have been one of the most exciting announcements at the EA Play conference, and the way that they delivered it was just so like off the hook. It was just like it hadn't been planned, it hadn't been scripted, it was completely out of the left field. And they basically, what they did is they interviewed Vince Zampella, who is the main, obviously, executive producer from Respawn, and obviously they're working on the new Star Wars title. Now, Vince just was sat in the crowd, and they didn't even give him like stage presence or anything. They was just basically asking him questions about it, and it was just very cringeworthy. You could tell he was uncomfortable, and they had to try to get him to answer a few questions, and he ultimately did reveal that the new Star Wars game is going to be called Star Wars The Fallen Order, which sounds interesting. Sounds like it's going to be a single player focused game, and it is set in between episode 3 and episode 4. So that's really interesting. And it looks, it's basically when the Jedi Order are being hunted down. You play as a Jedi. He did confirm that. And it is set for release in holiday season 2019. Now, there was just nothing. There wasn't even a logo. We didn't even get to see a teaser trailer. Now, if this game is set to come out in a year and a half, you would expect that there would be something there by now, that something would have been created, and that they could have pulled together some kind of teaser trailer to get people excited for it, to see what it's going to look like. But all they did was just basically interview Vince and ask him a few questions, and like, it just was really awkward and just really boring, and they could have done that in such a better way. They then obviously moved on to Star Wars Battlefront 2. A guy called Dennis Bramville came out on stage. Now, this guy has guts, because he basically came out on stage, which after the controversy of Battlefront 2 was pretty brave of him to do. And he came out straight away, and even at the beginning straight away, they were just like, we know we got it wrong, and we've learned from that, and we've had to kind of like adapt to it, and all the things we had planned to do we couldn't do because we had to sort of make these changes so that they didn't lose all their fan base and that players didn't just completely like dump their game. So he did sort of talk about that, and he did address the fact that they had kind of screwed up. He didn't apologize or say sorry, but he did kind of admit that the game obviously wasn't what people had expected or had wanted, and they had to address that. So I thought that was kind of gutsy and brave of him to do so, and was pretty spot on. Then talked a little bit about some of the additions, obviously, that have been added to the game. So Ewok Hunt, I think it was, which I love Ewoks, so that's kind of cool. Talked about obviously the Han Solo season as well, and the most exciting news they talked about was the fact they're actually going to go to the Clone Wars era, and that we're actually going to get like huge battles like Geonosis. I think they said it's the biggest map that they've ever produced. They talked about how they're going to be adding some heroes and villains, so they talked about like General Grievous, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Count Dooku, I think they mentioned as well. But yeah, so they sort of mentioned that, but again, they just showed like trailer footage. They showed like a screenshot of like General Grievous, like obviously taken from the movies. We didn't actually get to see any physical gameplay. We didn't get to see like what moves these characters were going to have, what it looked like, the size of the battle. We didn't get to see any of that. There was just no gameplay footage. So I don't know how you make Star Wars boring, but EA succeeded this year at making Star Wars boring, which is quite a feat in and of itself. So, you know, the last kind of thing, the beef that I sort of had with the conference was Command and Conquer Rivals. This game was given way more attention than it should have been given. It's a mobile game, and they did this thing where like I think they spent like 10 to 20 minutes like on this game where they actually showed like a live fight between two main sort of human characters, but they treated it like it was like an esports kind of event, and they had like professional live commentary on this game, and like it was an insult in my opinion to PC gamers that are obviously, you know, serious real-time strategy gamers, and Command and Conquer for a lot of people is quite a treasured franchise, and I'm sure for those people they feel like they've been completely like betrayed, and are obviously must be incredibly angry because this game just looked so simplified and dumbed down and generic, and obviously it's a mobile game, so there's only so much you can do in there, and so they didn't need to spend as much time on that as they did do. But again, I suppose it's that whole idea of investors and showing investors, and obviously, you know, investors are going to be interested in the mobile market and making money on that, and microtransactions and everything, pay to win, all those sorts of practices that come with mobile games. So obviously the fact that they showcased it on their conference was pretty terrible. Then obviously Andrew Wilson came out on stage and he was talking about subscriptions and streaming services, and he was showing, you know, where EA is going in terms of ultimately, I think they've purchased a company in Israel, I think they said, or Egypt, I can't remember, but he was talking about, you know, the way they're wanting to go is that EA will ultimately have a live streaming service for sort of PC gamers where they'll be able to pretty much play EA games anywhere and portably. So you'll be able to, I think they showed you can connect your mobile phone to a controller, play on your laptop, play on your tablet, play on your console, pretty much anywhere, and you can live stream, and that's the way that they're wanting to go. And then he talked about like the joys of subscription services. Like, we all take so much joy and pleasure out of paying those subscriptions, don't we? But he started talking about like the fact that it's something that we all love and take enjoyment out of it. And he talked about EA Origin Premier. Again, it's like the Microsoft Game Pass where you pay a monthly subscription and then you get access to a catalogue of games. I think he said at the moment there's like just over 100 games, but you will also get access to big titles like Battlefield 5 and Anthem and FIFA 19 on day one. So he started talking about that as well. And again, it's that whole games as a live service, and that's the way that it's going. But, you know, Andrew Wilson made this out like it was for our benefit, that it was something that we really want as gamers because we love our subscription services. But he's not kidding anyone. That was for the investors, to show the investors that that is what they're aiming to do. If people pay a monthly subscription of like £10 or £20 a month, that is guaranteed money coming in during those months when they have kind of a lull and they don't have that many games being, you know, produced or released. So again, aimed completely at the investors. So, a lot of the conference was kind of dull and mediocre. Now, there were the odd moments in EA Play that were good. I'd say some of the best moments were the EA Originals, the indie program that they have. You talked about A Way Out last year and how it did so well. And like it had like 2 million players within the first week. And then he talked about how because it's done so well, EA have actually put Joseph Fares and his team in a bigger sort of studio to produce bigger titles and more titles. And I think that's really awesome. I think that's really, really cool. And I loved that element of it. We got to see Unravel 2, and it were these points that were really good. We got to see some actual heartfelt, developers that clearly, they're in it for the gamers and they're producing it for the gamers. And the main guy, behind Unravel that came on last time in 2016, I think it was, and was super nervous. He was back on stage, a lot more confident this time, and just genuinely just oozing enthusiasm and passion for his project. And we got to see Unravel 2, which looked really cute and really nice. We actually got to see a live demonstration of it on stage, and I love that. I've always preferred it when you do live demonstrations. I just think it's better, it's more genuine, it's more realistic, and it's just more natural. So we got to see him play some Unravel 2. It's a new sort of co-op spin on it, taking the series in a new direction, and it's available today, which was a surprise when that was announced. But the game looks really good. It looks really fun. The puzzle solving side of it looks good, and it looks really interesting. So I'm definitely considering picking that up and playing that with Dante. And then we got to find out about a new indie title from Joe May, which is a German developer, called The Sea of Solitude. So she came up on stage. I think it was called Cornelia Gerpart. She came up on stage. Now, initially she was super nervous, really, really nervous, but I found that really endearing and really sweet. And obviously, eventually her passion just shone through, and obviously talked a little bit about the game, and the premise of it sounds really interesting. We got to see a gameplay trailer of it as well. It looked really nice. It looked really interesting. And I'm looking forward to finding out more, and I'm looking forward to picking it up and playing it. It is set to be released at the beginning of next year. So the EA Originals was a very strong point in the conference, and that's where we got, actually, this is for the gamers. These are some games that we're producing. We then got quite a large section on BioWare's Anthem. I liked what they did this year in terms of the conference. We got to see a cinematic trailer, which again, looks epic. The music combined with the action and the cinematography looked really cool. Did get me excited for it. We got to see some more kind of facial animations. Those look good, which is reassuring after the disaster of Mass Effect Andromeda's facial animation. So we know what they've got those down, which is good. But then quite interestingly after that, they brought Casey Hudson, Mark Farr, and Kathleen Rutzer, the lead writer on Anthem, onto stage, and they actually did kind of like a Q&A session where they sat down on stage and they kind of asked them questions about Anthem, and obviously it was clearly very scripted. They took questions from Twitter, but these questions had clearly been vetted, and it's pretty obvious that Casey and Mark and Kathleen had prepared their answers before coming on stage and knew what they were going to say. So yeah, it was really scripted. They did reveal a lot on stage and try to reassure a lot of fans. I think a lot of BioWare fans are concerned that this is going to just become like Destiny 3.0, and that, we're going to lose what we love with BioWare games, which is story and characters and choices. And all three of those words were used in their sort of discussion. They did say that no, it's not going to be like a multiplayer game with a story tacked on the side, that they are going to have a full story of it and the characters, but I still don't see how that's going to work, because when you go out into the open world, you do play with your friends in a multiplayer way, and then you come back to Fort Tarsus, and that's when it's a private area, and that's when you're going to get the story and the character interaction and make choices and see the consequences of those choices. but I don't see how that's going to work. They did talk a little bit like in the Mass Effect and the Dragon Age franchises, that some of our favorite moments are when we're talking to our companions and we're getting their reactions and we're finding out more about them. And I agree, it is, but there are other parts of those games that we love, when you're going out and there are cutscenes and cinematics happening in the middle of between the action and everything, and it doesn't sound like that's going to be possible if we're playing it in a multiplayer shared environment. So I am curious to find out more how that's going to work. I'd like to see more sort of gameplay involving those cutscenes to see how they're going to actually work and how they're going to interact. I'd like to even go around and have a look at Tarsus and see what these characters are like and introduce us to some of these characters. Now, BioWare have confirmed a few things, not on stage but off stage. They have confirmed that we're not going to have AI side characters because they want you to play with other human players, and there's not going to be any romance options, and the dialogue trees that we're all used to, that these are going to be simplified down. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not a massive fan of simplifying things, and I liked the romance options in the BioWare games, but that's not going to be an option. We can develop friendships apparently, but not romances. We found out a bit more about the different javelins, the different suits that you can use. There are 4 suits. I think it was Ranger, Colossus, Interceptor, and Storm. Storm looks suspiciously like the Warlock in Destiny. But what I like is you're not locked into a class, at the beginning like you are in Destiny, where you choose a class and you're locked into it. That's not the case with Anthem. You can actually acquire all 4 suits during the course of the game, and you can freely sort of switch between them. Now, they did say that you can play the game purely solo if you choose to do so, but they encouraged that you play it cooperatively because it would be more difficult if you did play it solo. I didn't like that. I think a lot of BioWare players like playing solo, like that solo experience, and want the option to play solo, and the option is there, but the fact that they're trying to push you or encourage you into going cooperatively, I think that should be people's own choice in terms of what they want to do. We then did see some gameplay footage. It looked good. The gameplay looked good, and it looked, really polished, and the suits look interesting. I love the verticality of it. The flying looks great. It looks like, the Iron Man game that we've been waiting for, including all those superhero landings. But yeah, I loved some of the gameplay and the ability to sort of barrel roll and strafe and actually shoot from the air, shoot your rockets and missiles from the air. We got to see some really, really cool sort of gameplay. The weapons looked interesting. Each kind of javelin have their own sort of weapons. We got to see a little bit on that. I wasn't too happy about all the numbers on screen and all the combo explosion things going on. I hope that's an option that you can turn off, because it was too crowded for my liking. You couldn't see things clearly enough, and that breaks immersion for me. But, maybe that'll be an option to turn that off. So Anthem looked good. It did look, really clean, and a lot of people are calling it the Destiny killer. But I think it's got to really show how it stands out, how it's different, and it hasn't really succeeded in doing that at the moment. It still looks like your Destiny generic kind of style online game, and I think a lot of people are wanting to see how that story is going to play in. They did talk a little bit about the story, and they talked a little bit about the world, and that the world was inhabited by these gods, and these gods abandoned the world, and the anvil of Anthem or something like that. But it was really vague. It was very, very vague, and it was a little confusing what they were saying. So hopefully we'll find out more information at Microsoft's conference. I'm hoping we'll get to see more, and I'm hoping they'll reveal a bit more. But they did reveal that the game is coming out in February next year, the 22nd of February 2019. So it's not that long away, and I'm hoping we'll get some kind of demo where we can actually get in and play the game and check it out before it comes out. I'm still undecided as to whether or not I'm going to get the game. I'm still saying I'm not. I'm still holding back and reserving judgment, and I'm not pre-ordering anything. I still have that ban and boycott of EA that I'm holding out on, but I am a fan of BioWare, and I do want to see them succeed. So I'm going to hold judgment on it until hopefully we'll learn a lot more from EA, hopefully with some sort of press conferences and also some behind closed door interviews that we're going to reveal a lot more information about Anthem, and obviously I'll make up my mind about it later. But anyway, let me know what you guys thought of Anthem in the comment section below, what you generally thought of it. So that was the EA Play conference. Kind of lackluster, really, a bit boring. There wasn't enough gameplay for my liking. Tonally, it was just off. It didn't seem like it was aimed at gamers. It wasn't a conference for gamers. It felt more like a conference for investors, and that's a problem for EA. They really, really need to be focusing on the gamers, because they've had a lot of, kind of bad rep, a lot of backlash from what happened last year, and anti sort of consumer practices. So I didn't feel that they redeemed themselves in their conference this year at E3. I think it was considerably worse than their conference last year. I thought their conference last year was actually quite reasonable and was pretty good and showed a lot of gameplay, but they did not do that this year, and I think that's going to hurt them in the long run. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the EA Play conference this year. Let me know what you guys thought of the conference in the comment section below. Suppose if I had to score it, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. That's how bad I thought it was. I thought it was pretty mediocre. It had some good moments, but it had more bad moments and more cringeworthy moments than I would have liked. But anyway, I hope you guys are having a great week. I'll be back again all week with more E3 content, so look forward to that. Anyway, take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.